Bonjour, dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to talk about the G20 summit. But first, we'll start with this report where, coinciding with the Nile Eagle 1 military drills, Cairo and Khartoum signed an MOU over the military production fields. More details in the following story by Sameh Sharif.
A memorandum of understanding was signed between the Egyptian National Organization for Military Production and Sudan's Military Industry Corporation in various manufacturing fields. The deal was announced by the Ministry of Military Production on Friday. The MOU comes on the sidelines of the visit made by Deputy Director General of the MIC, Al-Mu'tasim Abdullah, to a set of companies and factories affiliated to the Military Production Ministry to get acquainted with the manufacturing and technological capabilities there. The visit comes at the same time Cairo and Khartoum are holding Nile Eagles 1 military drills. Sudanese and Egyptian officials stated during the military drills that the upcoming period would witness more cooperation between the two countries' military.
The Egyptian Health Ministry reported 13 new deaths, bringing the total number of deaths from the virus to 6,521. This came amid concerns from the second wave of the coronavirus. More details follow.
The second wave of the coronavirus pandemic, currently striking several countries globally, is more widespread and dangerous than the first one. Cairo voiced the concern and urged the importance of avoiding the slipping into this risky curve. Cairo reiterated the importance of abiding by the virus-related preventative measures in different workplaces amid a spike in the infections rate that the country has been witnessing since early November. Madbouli called for tightening inspection campaigns on venues that flout the precautionary measures and imposing the penalties prescribed in the law alongside the decisions issued by the country's cabinet in this regard. In Egypt, wearing face masks in public places are mandatory since the 30th of May, with violators facing hefty fines of up to 4,000 Egyptian pounds. This month, it was decided that facilities that do not comply with the precautionary measures will be shut for 3 days. Earlier this month, Madbouli warned that the country will exercise zero tolerance against people or facilities that fail to adhere to preventative measures against the pandemic. The virus has so far infected 111,284 people and caused the deaths of 6,481 others since the outbreak began in February.
Cairo stressed the importance of resuming negotiations in order to reach a legally binding agreement on filling and operating the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam as soon as possible. More details in the following story.
Cairo has expressed aspiration to participate in the next round of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam negotiations that will be held during the next few days. The talks reportedly aim to reach a fair and balanced agreement that achieves the common interests of Cairo, Khartoum and Addis Ababa and preserves their water rights. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry issued a statement on Thursday following a 6-member virtual meeting on the issue by the three countries. The meetings were headed by the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa, Naledi Pandor. Cairo stressed on the importance of resuming negotiations in order to reach a legally binding agreement on filling and operating the Grand Renaissance Dam as soon as possible. The statement said this is being implemented as a result of the decisions reached in the African Union's meetings that were held over the past months. A separate statement by the Sudanese Water and Irrigation Ministry said Pandor has concluded Thursday's meeting by calling to continue the negotiations for the next 10 days, although Khartoum objects to resuming the negotiations according to the previous approach. According to a third statement by the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry, the next course of action in resuming the negotiations was discussed during Thursday's meeting and concluded by reaching an understanding on the need to continue the negotiations on the filling and annual operation rules of the Grand Dam. The AU-sponsored round of negotiations was launched in July after negotiations between the three countries reached a deadlock last year, as did negotiations sponsored by the US and the World Bank in February.
As As Africa joins the global outcry from the repercussions of COVID-19, the G20 focused on attempt to find a vaccine and looking for ways to delay the debt paying for the poor countries suffering from the pandemic. To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to have with us over the phone Dr. Yusuf Mazhar, former Deputy Minister of Industry. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Mazhar.
Good afternoon to you.
Dr. Mazhar, U.S. drug regulators gave emergency approval to a COVID-19 antibody therapy on Saturday. Actually, the G20 nations are pushing for the global access to the vaccines as the pandemic led to further closure in many parts of the world. Dr. Mazhar, how optimistic are you about finding a safe vaccine to the pandemic in such a short time?
Well, thank you very much for involving me in your program.
It's our pleasure, sir.
And let me say, for the G20, just to make a proper introduction before answering your question, we're very, of course, very lucky and happy that the G20 is in Saudi Arabia, which brings it closer to Africa, brings it also closer to Egypt, and also brings it closer to people who are undermined and will not be able to, let's say, join the parades of let's say, the COVID-19. Now, of course, one of the most important the resolutions of this group in Saudi Arabia was allotting an amount of funds or money for countries who are less able to acquire the vaccines which are now appearing daily. There are good results in Germany, in England, in America. I'm not going to discuss these, but the main thing is that these things were far away from the underprivileged countries of Africa. Now, with this the resolution, which I think was yesterday, this G20 has pledged that they will pay for sending a large amount of the products into this area. Which is very, very, very important, because without this funds, these vaccines, which have cost a lot of money to develop, would not have been in the hands of poorer countries. So it's a wonderful resolution, I think, and would not have come except that it was a meeting in Saudi Arabia with all the push and, let's say, influence of Saudi Arabia and the necessary people who are taking these decisions, which you can see in front of you, of course.
Indeed. Dr. Mazhar, the G20 actually is calling for global vaccine access. What are your expectations for people to accept such a vaccine which was produced in such a short period?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
how do you see the acceptance of people for the vaccine, Dr. Mazhar?
Yes. Well, you see, what is happening is that, of course, the G20 is a very powerful group of leaders.
Indeed.
And they have been meeting all over the world. Of course, Egypt has had its share. Our president has been also invited to these meetings. And now that it is, let's say, in a territory which is more understanding for the underdeveloped countries of the region, and with the aid of Saudi Arabia and its financing and political influences, and also with the, let's say, approval of the international agency, we will be able to get these vaccines in our area and around us, graciously thanking the G20 who has bridged the gap of financing.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Mazhar, also the twin crises of the pandemic and also the uneven, uncertain global recovery are dominating the two-day G20 summit under the chairmanship of Saudi Arabia. On the financial level, how can the developing and underdeveloped countries access the vaccine from your point of view, Dr. Mazhar?
Yes, well, the vaccine has taken some time to be developed. And we are getting the results now. The United Nations, of course, are backing. Russia, as you see, has developed and has already implemented a vaccine. The United States has announced sources that have also been approved. And the international agency, of course, is insisting that all these should be properly approved before use. Now,
Yes.
what I want to say, and I think the question has made me answer this, it's not enough to have a vaccine. You have to develop it, and you have to bottle it, and you have to distribute it. And without the G20's, let's say, very generous in introduction, we can now bottle, we can dispatch, we can freeze, and we can also pass it on to many of these underdeveloped, underprivileged countries.
Indeed.
This would not have been possible without this resolution, as you rightly said, of the G20, and being in Saudi Arabia.
Dr. Mazhar, where do you see Africa stands within the COVID-19 crisis and its economic downturn?
Well, you see that, of course, let's say a very common denominator between Africa and the Middle East and the Arab countries.
Yes.
And many of the Arab countries are in Africa, of course, in North Africa particularly, and Egypt, in, let's say, as a very good example. And you know that this continent has been also very much left out of the game, because the developed countries, of course, have looked after their own affairs at the beginning, and now we have to cross into Africa, and some of the examples that were being made in Africa were not true examples, and now we see that we have solved the problem of also being able to pay for and to send to the different countries of North Africa, let's say West Africa, East Africa, and possibly South Africa.
Yes.
So this is a very, very big step, you see, and it has only been enabled by this meeting of the G20.
Indeed. Dr. Mazhar, how do you see the impact actually of finding a vaccine on the global economic stage here, taking into consideration all of the negative repercussions that the economy actually of the whole world did face because of the repercussions of COVID-19?
Well, you see, of course, this epidemic, or whatever you may call it now, which is more than an epidemic, has really got into everywhere. As rightly the Chancellor of Germany mentioned in the meeting, that it has gone as far as the United Nations also have taken a role, because they have also attended the G20, and of course the royalty of Saudi Arabia and the, let's say, Russia. So all of these will participate, they will share, and they will improve the economic situations, because this epidemic is affecting everything. Transport, air transport is suffering terribly. Let's say sea transport is suffering. Exports are suffering. Imports are suffering. Everybody suffers. Small industries, large industries are also suffering. So your question about the effect on the economics of the whole area is directly, but it hits at each one of the different, let's say, tributaries between to reach a successful economic development.
Indeed.
It's a good question.
Yes. Dr. Youssef Mazhar, our former Deputy Minister of Industry, thank you very much, sir, for your precious input. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Our dear viewers, with that we come to the end of this edition of our program Africa Today. Hope you have enjoyed it. Until we meet again, I'm Mahisi Rabeh signing off. Thank you very much for watching.